In this video, we're going to go through the process of connecting a new Overkill Solar BMS to a 16-cell lithium iron phosphate battery. First thing you need to get out of the box is the balance wire terminal board. Everything else can be set aside for now. You're going to need to supply wire for the balance wire. This is my personal favorite wire. It comes from the boat store. It's called Marine Master Primary Wire. Today I'm using 16 gauge wire, but you can use anything from 20 gauge up to 14 gauge wire if you have it. I'm also going to be using 3 colors. The colors don't matter, but it's nice to have a different color on the most positive and most negative cells. At least it helps organize everything. You're also going to need some larger wires to connect the battery to the BMS. This will be connected from BC16 to the input of the BMS, and then I'll be using this wire harness to connect the battery to the rest of my accessories. I've got an Anderson plug on here that I use to connect demonstrations. Overkill Solar does sell wire assemblies like this. We have 4 gauge, 2 gauge, and 3/0 gauge in stock, and we'll add these crimped ends for you. Besides basic hand tools, you're also going to need a wire stripper. This is a really basic one, or this is an automatic wire stripper. This is my favorite one, which I'll be using. You're going to need ring terminals that fit your cells. These are heat shrink 1/4-inch ring red terminals that fits a 22 to 16 gauge wire, and we are using 16 gauge wire today. So these 1/4-inch ones will fit over the M6 studs on this battery. We're not using the screws that came with these cells. What I'll actually be using is this set of nuts and studs that Overkill Solar also sells. Using studs and nuts is a lot more reliable than using a screw on these kind of terminals, because the threads are only so deep in here, and if your screw is too long, it will bottom out and leave the connection loose, or if your screw is too short, it will strip the threads out when you try to tighten it. So the nuts and studs are a big improvement. To go with the ring terminals, you'll be needing a crimping tool. This is my all-time favorite crimping tool. It's actually lineman's pliers with a notch on the back for crimping, and this puts a really solid dimple in the ring terminals that never fails on me. Other crimp terminals that you might have are this type or this type, which is ratcheting. This is my least favorite, even though it's the most expensive. Another optional thing that I'll be using here is wire ferrules. These are a really nice way to finish the end of the wire where it goes into the screw down terminal block. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. You can connect the bare wire into the terminal block if you want to. I went ahead and pre-made all 17 wires that I need. One end has the 1/4-inch ring terminal and the other end has the wire ferrule on it. I made these all the same length. If you want, you can make them one at a time as you're working and make them exactly the right length, but I'm just going to use the same length and I'll tie up the extra when I'm done. Before we get started with the wires, one thing I want to show you on this terminal block is that these are all actually closed. So we're going to start by unscrewing each terminal in order to open it. So we need to have all these open so that we can insert the wire on top of that clamping bit. The way I have my cells laid out here is I've started with cell number 1, and it goes all the way down this way to cell number 8 and all the way back to cell 16. So my most negative connection, that's BC0, and my most positive connection, that's BC16, are both on this end of the battery. I'm going to go ahead and start with my orange wire and use that for BC16. For the moment, I'm going to put these nuts on finger tight, and then with each wire I'm going to stick it in the terminal block and tighten it down. Next I'm going to use my black wire and put that on BC0. I'm going to keep going like this and attach all of my balance wires one at a time. One thing that you need to be careful of during this process is the pins on the back of the balance wire terminal board. If you were to sit these down on top of a metal tool or a metal work surface, you could cause a short circuit between 2 cell connections, and that would burn out the traces on this board. If that happens, you can request a new terminal board from Overkill Solar and we'll replace it. I'm going to take my next wire and land it on BC1, and I'm going to continue in that fashion all the way down and back until I get back to BC15 and I'll be finished. Okay, now that I have all of the balance wires connected and the main positive wire, I'm going to go around and tighten all of the cell terminals. Now that all the cell terminals are tight, I can use the test button on the terminal board. If I just press this button, I should see a green light and I should see no accompanying red lights. If you get only the green light with no red lights, it's okay to continue. Before I connect the BMS, let's go ahead and clean up these balance wires and use the green zip ties to make them nice and neat. Okay, now that we have all of our balance wires installed and neatly organized, it's time to attach the BMS. We're going to need the parts bag and we're going to need the BMS itself. Today I'm going to be mounting the BMS on the DIN rail clips. Now that I have my BMS mounted on the DIN rail, I can connect up the BC16 positive wire, and that goes on the plus cell terminal right here. It's important if you're using a wrench to tighten this, the wrench has to be thinner than the space under the terminal, or else when you tighten it, it'll pinch the circuit board and damage it. So you have to make sure that your wrench is thinner than 8 millimeters. Okay, for now we're going to leave B plus disconnected. Now they can plug in the balance connector. We've already previously tested it. We know that there's no faults in the wiring. So we can just go ahead and plug it in. You can plug that in any order, and as soon as we do that, the BMS will start powering up. We see the firmware version. Now, detected 16 cells of type lithium iron phosphate. Is this correct? If that is correct, you're going to press the OK button, and it will continue with the initial setup. Okay, now that it's finished, we have a fresh new screen. We can see the battery voltage, we can see the wattage, and we see no current indicated. Down here where it says amps, if there was any current being measured, we would see a reading there. And having no reading for amperage at this time is perfect, because that means that the null current point is calibrated and we don't need to do anything. If you do see some current here, in a later video I will go over how to calibrate the null current. What we do see here is we've got two warning triangles next to charge and discharge, and we've got no green lights here. That means that the charge and discharge are both switched off, and that's because I haven't plugged in the temperature sensors yet. So this is actually shut off because of a low temperature alarm. probe number 1 and probe number 2. These probes can be attached anywhere on the cells. They're just supposed to be in contact with the cells, so you could stick them in between the cells, you could stick them under a bus bar, tape them anywhere you want. Charge and discharge have come on now that the low temperature alarms have cleared, and at this point the BMS is ready to use. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the output wire. What I have here is I have an Anderson connector, and I've already connected the negative side to BC0. It's also possible to tighten these just by holding the BMS. Basic parameters for a lithium iron phosphate battery have already been loaded, so this battery should be safe to operate now without making any changes. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for the next one. Bye.